He was in the #1 position in most hot seat rankings during the offseason that carried into 2022. So most of us thought just a matter of time. And here we go. Bryan Harsin relieved his duties there at Auburn. We've got Kyle Loomis on the line from E2C Network. They do everything Auburn. Check them out right here on YouTube. Kyle, how are you today?
I'm doing well, considering how busy my Monday was with obviously the news that we're talking about here today. And amongst that, an interim coach being named, an AD being hired, all of that in between. It feels like every time you and I get together, Mark, we're talking about some big decision that Auburn's making, whether it's quarterback, now head coach. We got to stop meeting like this.
Yeah, maybe we can meet at some point. I'm sure it would be a joyous occasion for you talking about Auburn's, contention for an SEC championship. That would be better served. But we'll deal with the here and now, and maybe that next guy is the guy, because certainly the last one they had was able to make that happen in 2013. All right. Well, do you think this was the right decision to make at this point? He's only coached 21 games. Obviously, last year didn't go well. They lost 5 games consecutively down the stretch. There are a lot of conditions surrounding the end of last season, Bo Nix in particular. They were close losses. The team was a pretty decent team. However, the record didn't reflect it. They had a tumultuous offseason that we've covered many times, and you do on a daily basis. But now we come into 2022, and the team probably performed at the level that many expected, but that's not up to Auburn standards.
Yes, absolutely. I do think the expectations from the national and local pundits obviously have been met, and those were very, very low when you look at where we're sitting at now with our current record and how the overall energy feels with the team, or felt with the team, with Bryan Harsin and the majority of his staff at the helm. The thing is, the question was, do you think this was the right decision? I am someone that firmly believes that a head coach should be given a minimum of 4 years minus egregious problems, moral, ethical, and, to some extent, winning and losing type of situation. Obviously, this kind of falls into that category. I'm not really one that's going to fight this firing because of the fact that there's not a lot for me to fall back on to support Coach Harsin being given that 4-year minimum. For me, I'm a big stability guy. I think that's a necessity for most coaches to have. And but you've got to have something to show for it, because Coach Harsin, really his claim to fame here is ending the long streak in Baton Rouge of losing that Auburn had in a really big top 10 win over Ole Miss. Yeah, they looked decent at times last year. Their record didn't reflect that. But really, when you get down to it, it's really hard to make a case to really fight for the guy to stay. Even if it was at the end of the season, we make the change. Had there been a big turnaround at the bye week, which we kind of thought we might start seeing even in a loss to Ole Miss, there might be a different conversation that we're having here. But the way things completely went back to the way they had been before the Ole Miss game, it's really hard to make the case to keep him.
Much different circumstances in Lincoln, Nebraska, but when Scott Frost made an onside kick decision against Northwestern, that was kind of that's not the reason he was fired, but that seemed to be the point at which it was like, okay, this is going to be the moment that everyone remembers as just kind of the microcosm. For me, with Bryan Harsin, it was watching the LSU game, and they're down inside the 10-yard line. They're ready to take the lead back, and they call for a halfback option play that just goes awry. And it's like, you're moving the football. Let's stay with and it hit me in the same way. This is going to be the play that people are going to remember Bryan Harsin for, among others, but as being, okay, last straw, he's out.
Yeah, I would actually even take that a step further to the Georgia game, I believe it was, where we went on a fake punt on our 30, I believe it was. Highly questionable call. I actually didn't get to see that happen live because I was traveling, and luckily, I guess for my own sanity, the Wi-Fi cut out right when that play happened. So when I got the connection back, apparently Georgia was about to score, and I just thought, oh, well, they just went down and scored after getting the ball back. No, little did I know that a very questionable call had been made. Listen, yeah, you look at some of those decisions, whether it's the Scott Frost situation, other ones that probably could be talked about with Bryan. There were some things there that make you kind of question what's really going on here. I'm not someone to get on the negativity train and really just, wave the banner to fire someone. But as I already said, it really just became so difficult, other than just preaching the let's support who we have right now type of storyline, to really jump on the bandwagon and kind of fight the firing.
There are a number of things working against Bryan Harsin leading into this season. Number one, he was always an outsider to the SEC. Not that you can't come in and win. Brian Kelly's attempting to do that right now at LSU, and others have. However, an outsider to the SEC, so that raised some eyebrows. Number two, obviously, with all that happened in the offseason. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but by all accounts, that wasn't his issue. He was completely exonerated, not an issue with him, but it just was a bad situation that certainly didn't help in recruiting, image, reputation, all of that for him, or especially for the school or university, and just difficult to recover from that. And when the mountain is so steep in the toughest division in college football, regardless of how hard he tried and tried to recommit himself or continue with his commitment to the university and the football program, it's difficult to envision that he would have been able to turn all that around.
Yeah, you really look at this offseason as kind of, if you can't get this fixed now, it's going to get much, much worse. And boy, did it get much, much worse. He was not given the best foundation to work from. That's clear. That's evident. But that does not excuse the issues that probably should have shown a little bit more correction, or a little bit more opportunities should have been seized a little bit more to do some things a little bit better. And they just didn't happen. The off the field issues, yes, by the president's investigation, was completely exonerated of that. Now, depending on who you talk to, there's apparently still discussion as to whether the actual issue was addressed or not. But in terms of on paper being exonerated, that is true. It's still that black eye that the program that he has is really hard to fight against, because we know that the negative recruiting was coming from rivals, especially all throughout the recruiting cycle this past go around. And it was very effective, especially when you look at what was going on the field. That's really hard to work from when you already had a shaky foundation to start with.
Good. Kyle Loomis on the line from E2C Network. You can join him for not just Auburn football talk and the rest of the crew there at E2C Network, but they talk all things Auburn. So if you want to be inundated and consumed with Auburn culture, whether that's academics and otherwise, please join him on E2C Network right here on YouTube. All right. Let's get to Cadillac Williams. Take that next step. Carnell Cadillac Williams, one of the famed players, one of the great historic players in the history of Auburn football, great running back in the early 2000s, played on that 2003 team that went undefeated, has been named interim coach. So you mentioned to me before we started to record, you were excited about that decision. Why?
We really need something to be excited about at this point. And so that's really kind of what it gets down to. From a personal standpoint, Cadillac Williams is my all-time favorite athlete from Auburn. There's a picture of him behind me on the screen right now. You can probably see back behind my right shoulder. I love the dude so much. He was my Bo Jackson. When a player comes back to Auburn, period, that's something special. When they come back to be part of the coaching staff and are able not just to stay over from throughout one coaching staff, but be carried over to the next one, that says something about how meaningful this guy is, not just to the program, but to the university. Auburn people love Cadillac Williams. Yes, we love him because of Go Crazy Cadillac, all his amazing runs that you can find on YouTube. But the dude just loves Auburn. Today in his teleconference, press conference, which I was listening in on, you could hear the emotion in his voice that he was trying to kind of hold back. And I thought he did a very good job of keeping that under composure. Very humbled by this, very happy and bittersweet, he kept saying. This is a guy that sounds like he actually really liked working under Coach Harsin and was very thankful for those opportunities. And so now he has to do the job of picking up the pieces from the guy that was his leader and try to figure out how to salvage this year. Now, make no mistake, folks. We are not going to go 4-0 to end this season here. but we might do something pretty special under Cadillac Williams just from the energy level of alone. And I'm not saying that happens against Mississippi State this week, but I will be in the stands for Texas A&M on 6:30 in 2 weeks. And I am super excited for what's going to happen when he comes running out of that tunnel as the leader of the Auburn Tigers. The energy is going to be probably beyond even what the Penn State matchup was this year. He's a player's coach. He's not so far removed from being an athlete that he can't, he has a very easy time of connecting with those athletes. There's a lot of things to like about this decision for Auburn to put him at the helm for the rest of the season.
And Kyle, with such a small sample size that you note there, 4 games, how do you think he's going to be evaluated?
I hope very kindly, because of, again, the foundation now that he has to inherit and work from. You know, I don't think anyone's kidding themselves to think that Carnell Williams is going to be a lead candidate as the head coach at the end of this season. Now, if he goes on a tear and picks up recruiting a little bit, you kind of have to turn your head and go, well, this is an Auburn guy. We love our Auburn guys. Why not give him at least a really serious look? But that will take care of itself out there on the field. So I'm not really looking at it this way. But in terms of evaluating him, it really comes down to, you know, effort, getting back to some of the basics of what Auburn football has been known for, and that's been hard-nosed running. And yes, the offensive line, I've talked about it ad nauseum on my channel, how bad it's been at times. There's been maybe some minor improvements the last couple of weeks with that. Get back to some of that things that we're familiar with Auburn fan. If he can do that and make the Auburn fans feel that passion that they felt when he was running the ball, I think he'll be evaluated very favorably, regardless of the win-loss.
So Bryan Harsin wasn't able to handle the job for whatever reason, wasn't able to handle the job and succeed at the standard after being a highly successful Group of 5 coach at arguably the most successful Group of 5 program over the past 20 years. So why would we think that Carnell Williams is ready for this job? He's never been a coordinator, head coach.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll be honest with you. When we all started discussing after getting over the initial shock of the firing, who's going to be interim, the name that popped up mainly was Zach Etheridge, the defensive back coach, because he was already associate head coach. That would have made a lot of logical sense, being technically the already number 2. But I think that shows you what Coach Cadillac Williams means to that locker room. The fact that the powers that be there at the time, Rich McGlynn, who is going to be number 2 AD now with the new AD John Cohen coming in, him making that decision with President Chris Roberts to put Cadillac at the helm, I think they can really tell what was lacking in that locker room. And that was not necessarily a belief, because this team never quit on Bryan Harsin. That's the crazy thing. As bad as it got, it never quit. But there's something intrinsic that you maybe can't put your finger on about what it means to have him at the helm for us as fans, but probably even more than we'll be able to grasp for those boys in the locker room.